And this episode is going to be about partners and partnerships. So, first and foremostly, who was your finest partner? Because you had a great partnership. Although when you went to Arsenal, you was injured. But you and Liam Brady, when you look at partners in midfield of British football, you two must have been up there in that top one.
Well, the terrible thing in my life is that everything seemed to go wrong. And when I joined Arsenal, I didn't want to leave Stoke, number one. But number two is I thought, well, going to a great football club, and I wanted to go there and play with Alan Ball. And obviously I knew that Brady was a player.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise how good he was until I got there. But I got two things go wrong, really. I was, number one, I was injured. And number two, I found out that Alan Ball, they bought me to replace him instead of, playing with him. So I think that midfield trio would have been the best. Brady was unbelievable. He was an incredible player.
But that midfield trio, you're absolutely right. It had everything, didn't it? It had right foot, left foot. It had balance. It had all the ingredients for the perfect midfield trio, didn't it? It was incredible.
Well, I think they mentioned that it's always said that when Alan Ball was at Everton, they had the greatest. They call him at Everton. They call him the
Holy Trinity.
Grail,
Yeah.
Holy Trinity, and Colin Harvey, Howard Kendall, and Borley. But Borley was the best.
Yeah.
But they were a fabulous three, and they were always known as the best midfield trio. But I really believe that us three would have been better if I hadn't have been injured and had the form I had at Stoke and with Brady coming through. Brady was an incredible player. I mean, we never saw left-sided players in Scotland. They had Jim Baxter. There wasn't many players with a left foot in this country, that Brady was just a total one-off. He was a freak. And, while I was struggling at Arsenal, the only good thing about it was I was watching him play.
Yeah.
Which was a shame for me, but it was a pleasure to be on the field with him.
And talking about a magnificent trio, it leads us into our first song of this podcast, Alone by the Bee Gees, a trio that you absolutely love and adore, and I think a perfect pick. What's the story behind this track, Al?
Well, I'm a great, as you know, Paul, I'm a great Bee Gees fan, but as we spoke about, it's a known thing that most of the music, it's like a footballer talking about, they say about me, about West Germany when you played against West Germany, but you played better games than that. You played against Liverpool, but that's the game that people think of. But with the Bee Gees, they made all these top records, million sellers, and as Elton John says in his book, most of the songs I made were far better than the ones that were very successful. And Alone was an incredible song. And it reminds me of me.
Yeah. Because
I always ended up alone.
Was that by design or just circumstance, Al?
What, the song or me?
No, you being alone. Because
no, because you do. That's what happens that's what happens when you're in a position where, George Best was always alone.
Yeah.
That's what happens. You end up. It's like John Lennon with the Beatles. All right, he ended up with Yoko, but. He was alone. He was a man alone, and Sinatra sang the great album called "A Man Alone." "Alone" is a great song, and you really have to listen to it for it to grasp it. It's a most wonderful song, and out of all that, I'm a fantastic big Bee Gees fan, and I remember when we made "Blue Is the Colour," they were coming out the recording studio, and I walked past them. We walked past them, a few of the players, and I missed an opportunity to pull them aside and you know. But I wonder what they were doing in the recording studio, because we got number 5 and they never got anywhere. So it's just, that's how stupid life is, you know.
Again, it's all about, as you alluded to earlier, some of the more commercial hits wasn't their better and best material. It's what sits to the ears of the producers of radio stations and shows, and what they perceive is their best. And I'm sure that you could sit down with many an artist and they would all say that song that sold the most for us wasn't our favourite song, not by a long stretch.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think the most famous one of all was My Way with Frank. He hated it.
Mm.
He didn't like it. Paul Anka wrote it. Paul Anka wrote it for him, but Paul Anka sang it. But I think Frank kind of looked at it as I don't know the way he looked at it, but he didn't like singing it. He didn't like the song. He's noted as saying that I don't like, but when he went on stage, if he didn't sing it, people would scream out, you know, play My Way, but he didn't like the song. And it's it just, I mean, that is one great example of, you know, songs that you can get stuck with, that really weren't your greatest song. I'm sure he has many a song, you know, which the one like You and Me, I think that's more Frank than anything, you know. It's more romantic. Frank was a romantic, and I think You and Me is far better. I'd rather, if I was get up in the morning, I'd put You and Me on and not My Way. I don't particularly like My Way myself.
And leads us nicely into track 2, which is You and Me. We wanted it all, in brackets.
Absolutely, that's where we went wrong. That's where my marriage went wrong. I think, and a lot of people's marriage goes wrong. It's a story. It's a wonderful song. It's a wonderful story that, you know, a couple want everything and you end up with nothing. You know, there was a lot of love there, but you know, it ain't gonna work. You know, and Frank, I mean, the writing of Peter Allen is just phenomenal. You know, and I've got Peter Allen, who wrote it, you know, do it on. I've got him on video doing it, and he's just fantastic, you know. And there's as we spoke about a 1,000 million times, Paul. You know, there's a great story behind every song.
SRBMedia.
Who was he? What was he? How great was he?
Well, Peter Allen, I'd never heard of until I heard Frank sing You and Me, and I looked him up, and it was it's another incredible case of what's more come to the front today. Years ago, it didn't really matter because everybody was like it, I suppose. But he was married to Liza Minnelli, and after while they were married, it happened that he come out the closet. It's like Elton John getting married, and you know, it takes an individual to a little bit of time to do that kind of thing. But now it's just common knowledge, and you crack on with it. But Pete Allen he's an Australian. He was a wonderful songwriter. He wrote that song, the other song with Carol Bayer-Sager. He did this, and he wrote 3 number ones with big people, you know. He was a fantastic artist. But in England, if you walked out and you walk into a pub or whatever, because that's all we do in pubs is have a quiz in it, and we question each other. Nobody ever heard of him. What a talent, you know.
Again, that's the beauty of when I say working with you, we actually don't work, because we just talk about football and music and our common love of different things. And, you know, whether we do a show together, a podcast together, we talk, you know, during the week as well. And you've introduced me to so many people that I've said, say it again now, what's the name? And then I've gone on Google and I've looked them up and I've gone, wow. And you open so many doors. in essence, I guess a player that had so many doors closed during his career opened so many doors for other people in a different way.
Well, it's you know, it doesn't mean because you know so much, or I mean, I don't know that much, but
Yeah,
what I do know, I lived in the day when I came across these
yeah,
people, and Chelsea at that time in the early 70s, you know, I was surrounded by people. I just took everything for granted
yeah,
that these people, everybody knew them, and they were big names. They were from whatever world, and I just kind of whether it was Peter Wingard, who was top man at the time on TV, whether it was Frank Allen, the Searchers, whether whoever, Dusty Springfield, whatever, you know, it was like an everyday thing, Paul, you
yeah,
know. And yeah, of course you do. You just, as I say, you take it for granted. But as you get a little bit older, you pick up a newspaper and say, well, David Beckham knows, you know, he's gone to Hollywood and he knows Tom Cruise. Well, that doesn't rub off with me, because if you've got money,
yep,
you can meet these people.
yeah,
But we had no money, and we were still out, you know, rubbing shoulders with the great Jack Jones, and Bobby Moore was always around, and you know, the only man to win the World Cup, and I was very privileged and I'm very honoured, and I never ever, when people, I speak to people, I never, I say, well, I've met these people and all that, and they, half the time, 99% of the time, they don't believe me. But that was just the way it was in the 70s in Chelsea.
Now, another person that you met and you had a great friendship, and I was looking on YouTube, and there's a wonderful interview with you and Tommy Wisby in a beer garden, and Frank McClintock was there that day, although Frank had gone to another event. Talk to me about Tommy and what Tommy meant to you, and how you connected with Tommy in the first place.
Well, it's Tommy Wisby. I can look up now. I'm sitting at my computer, and I've got him on my wall.
Yeah,
He was a wonderful man. Um, Probably the whole world think that, you know, he's a train robber. He was a villain and all that. Tommy was one of the loveliest people you could ever meet. And when I'd come out of hospital, a very good friend of mine, Terry Shepherd, put a dinner on for me at one of the big hotels in London, and I was on the top table with my doctor, David Goodyear, and a gentleman come up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he gave me an envelope, and I said, "What is this?" And he went, "It's from the gentleman over there." And I said, "No, no, 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 no." I said, "Terry's done the thing for me tonight. He's raising some money out of me because I was in trouble, and it was from Tommy." And I said, "Well, I'm going to have to go and see him and give it him back." And I went over to see him, and I said, "Please, Tommy, I'm fine." And I didn't know he's a great train robber.
yeah,
And you know, it's amazing. And we become such great friends. And I remember I said to him one night, you know, because he got to meet my mother. My father was gone by this time. And I said, "Tom, I'm glad you never met my dad." So he went, "Well, why'd you say that?" I said, "Because if you'd have met him, he'd have been on the robbery with you, and I wouldn't have become a footballer. While he was away doing time with you, I would have no one to get me forward." And he laughed, and I went, "Yeah, it's true, he would have, but, you know, because Tommy was such a lovely man, and my father was always looking to get work and all that. They didn't do nothing wrong. They got on the train and it was like going to Sainsbury's and taking money, really. They worked out well, and it's just a shame that Tommy got, you know, he got labelled with the wrong name, really.
yeah.
He was a most lovely man throughout. I'm 68 years of age, and he's as good as they come.
But
And
that's
he met Frank, by the way, you know.
yes, that's a great story as well that you've got to tell.
Yeah, he's Tommy was on. I wouldn't say was on the run, as they call it, but he went to he went when he was doing this, that, and the other, and he went to Vegas. And Tommy liked a good life, and he wasn't he was far from flash or nothing like that. He was like everybody's dad, And he goes to Las Vegas, and he's sitting in the bar this night, and see the old bar, and he's sitting there having a drink, and he couldn't believe his luck. The curtains went open, and two big guys come in, and they look round, and who walks in but Sinatra. And he couldn't believe his luck, And the first thing he said to the fella behind the bar, please give them whatever they want, And he put a little note with it and said, from the great chain robber. And Frank sat there, and they had a few drinks, and Tommy forgot it, and he couldn't believe that he was in the same room as Frank. And they got up to go. The minders done what they did again. They checked outside. They looked around and see if it was okay if they leave. But while they were doing that, Frank walked across to him, and he said, "You're the great chain robber, yeah?" And Tommy said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm your biggest fan." And he went, "That's nice." He said, "It's great to meet the great chain robber." I mean, what a lovely moment. It's like meeting Beckenbauer, like meeting, Pele. What a wonderful moment. So he'd met his hero in the most incredible, under the most incredible circumstances. Fantastic. But Tommy deserved that because Tommy was a wonderful man.
And he was also a big fan of Charlie George. Was Tommy an Arsenal supporter? Because listening and watching that video that you cut there, where was the pub? Where was the beer garden?
That was his local pub over in North London.
Yeah.
And it was a day of his book.
His book launch, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I said, well, look, let's do a little. Let's film this, and we filmed it. And he's a very shy man.
Yeah.
And I just said to him, "Your greatest moment," and I said, "Surely it's got to be watching Liam Brady."
Yeah.
And he said, "No." He said, "Meeting Frank." But he loved football. He loved music. He was one of those that, he was one of the old school that loved going out on a Sunday, get dressed up like the old school did, and he loved pub singers and all that. But Frank was the man, and he just loved his football, and he loved Arsenal. He loved Arsenal.
Now, a wonderful artist up next is Alki Brooks. Don't Cry Out Loud. What's behind the lyrics or that song? And did you ever get to meet Alki?
No, I one of my great regrets. I miss Dusty.
Yeah.
But I would love to meet. I think she's the most wonderful artist. But it just happened. I was on. Strangely enough, it's not much of the music at them times. But I've been away from America for 4 years, and I come back and play for Stoke. And I was rooming with my good friend Peter Fox, who was a goalkeeper at Stoke.
Yeah.
And we were big pals, and he had this Elkie Brooks thing, and I've always had my music with me, and he put this on, and Pearl's a singer and everything else, but this girl could sing, couldn't she?
Yes.
I mean, if she'd have been around today, there'd be no stopping. She was as good as anyone. She had the most fabulous voice, and again, Peter Allen wrote that, which it's uncanny really when you think that different from Sinatra to Elkie Brooks to someone else's song we got there. He fantastic songwriters, and put the music. But she was a great artist.
SRBMedia.
But that's the thing with songwriters. They write songs, and I guess in some situations they write certain songs with an artist in mind, and then sometimes they write a song and think, tell you who'd sing that great. Alkie Brooks. I'll give that to Alkie. I'll phone her up and do you fancy singing one of my tunes? And as a then an artist, they must be absolutely overwhelmed that somebody as great as that looks at them, and it's a tremendous honour to almost bring that baby to life.
Well, absolutely, and you going back to the Elton John situation, I'm a massive fan of his. I think he's just fantastic, and he says, who knows? He said that there was one particular song that he didn't want to record, and it became a bestseller. And he hated it, and he didn't think it was going to happen. But who knows? It's like I always relate football, music, whatever, in any walk of life. I've gone Chelsea. People think of me as a Chelsea player, but I go to Stoke and I become, I'm more of a legend in Stoke than what I am in Chelsea, because I've met the man. You just click.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened with Alkie Brooks. This song, it just fell into her lap, and as I say, today that would go to #1 straight away. It was the most beautiful song.
And the lyrics are great, isn't it? I mean, don't cry out loud.
Yeah.
And you again being the artist that you are, you love to go behind those lyrics and listen to them lyrics. I mean, I'll phone you up, especially if I phone you up in the morning before you've got on your bike, and you've got so many beautiful love songs on there. And for people that don't know Alan Hudson, have opinions of you because they think they know you and they watched you play, but me knowing you like I do, you have got such a romantic streak through you. Well, it just runs through your veins, romance, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think at the end of the day, being a romantic is wonderful. It's and I think that goes hand in glove with being an entertainer as well. If we've done this thing about Jack Grealish recently, and how great he is, and it's the working man's ballet again, isn't it?
Yeah.
SRBMedia.
Absolutely. And it is, as you say, it's like a love affair, and football won't change, life won't change. It is all about love. It's all about partnerships and partners. And the most beautiful girl in the world, Charlie Rich, it leads us into our next song. Who was the most beautiful girl in the world that you met, and what is the story behind this song from Charlie?
Well, I'm trying to work out who was actually. No, it was, the reason I sucked that in, Paul, because it was a great time of my life, and I moved to Stoke. It was 1974, and a good friend of mine who just turned 80, called Eric Skills at Stoke. He marked me at Chelsea in one of my first games, and we become very close friends at Stoke. And he had a pub in Stoke, and I was living with Jeff Hurst at the time. Strangely enough, I just moved up to Stoke, and I remember going into Elfie's pub on a Sunday, and this song was on the jukebox all the time, and it just goes in your mind, doesn't it? Hey, and I was split up with my wife at the time, and she was, in my eyes, the most beautiful girl in the world. But it all went wrong. We got back together, but at the end of the day, what a song! It catches the imagination. It's a song that, to sit down and write it and to have him sing it, it was wonderful. But that's why it always sticks out. And people say to me, what happened to Stoke? I remember the first few weeks I was there, I used to go in this pub, and we always used to put it on. And if you play it, if you brought it out today, it's a top song, isn't it?
I remember it as a kid, because I remember me dad buying it for my mum, And it is one of the most. I mean, another one that we've played in previous My Life, My Musics is My Eyes Adored You, again, Frankie Valli, another
Absolutely.
most beautiful
Absolutely.
love song. And it takes an absolute
Well,
artist to create that.
if you're gonna go home to the missus and you love your
Exactly.
missus and
Yeah.
you give her a tape of that,
Yeah.
you give her that song and you give her a bunch of flowers and you say play that, and I think you're on a winner, isn't you?
Well, you are, because that's what my dad done. Mind you, at Christmas, my mum wanted a fur coat, and he brought her a shopping trolley, and she wasn't very happy about that. Let me tell you now. But it was all about that time and those glorious days of the 70s. Now, Jeff
Yeah.
Hurst, what was it like moving in with Jeff and his missus?
Well, it was quite weird, really, because uh, to be perfectly honest, mate, I didn't really know Jeff was at Stoke when I signed there.
Yeah.
Because it was I wasn't aware about Stoke City. I didn't know what was going on there. And then I moved there, and all of a sudden, I read my boss told me that I was moving in with him, and I said, no, I want to. I'm going in the hotel. He said, if you think I'm going to let you run around Stoke on your own, and that's how it came about, you know. But it was strange. When I mean, a lot of people, I suppose there are a lot of people that will think, God, it must have been great living. I mean, he's in awe of so many people in awe of him, or think, you know, he scored a hat trick in the World Cup. There I am living with him, and you know, I don't really want to be there. I want to be on my own. But there was one question I needed to ask him, and that was, you know, what went through your mind when you scored the third goal in the final? And he said to me, you know, this is how lucky you can be.
Yeah.
He said, I aimed for the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, so I thought, well, I was right about you all the time, you know.
I would say
So
that was the second most luckiest thing about Jeff Hurst. I'd say the most luckiest thing is that Jimmy Greaves got a knock against France and he had a couple of stitches in his shin, and because of that, Jeff got his shirt. But if Jimmy Greaves wouldn't have, if that hadn't have happened to Jimmy Greaves, I don't think anybody would have had a shirt off Jimmy Greaves, because in the 60s, Jimmy Greaves was the greatest striker and the greatest striker that England have ever had.
well, he was. I was very lucky at Chelsea that I wore his number 8 shirt. I
Yeah.
always told him that. I got on great with Jimmy. I love Jimmy, and it's sad that he's not very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. You know, but it's all circumstances, isn't it? And it's like
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
It's like me missing the final in '70 and missing the World Cup. These things happen. Jeff got his chance. I mean, in all fairness, Jeff Hurst was a great player. I
Oh,
played
yeah.
with him. When I played him at Stoke, he was on his last legs, and he was still a terrific player to play with. You know, you could pick him out, and you know, from anywhere. He was a tremendous player. So I can understand that. But I don't know. As you say, in '66, you know, we never. We won the World Cup, but we never did it with style. If
Yeah.
we'd have won the World Cup like Argentina win it, if they'd have won it without Maradona, it would have been any good, you know, because he was the greatest. Holland without Cruyff, you know, you can win World Cups, but we won it. We actually won it without our best player.
There is a school of thought, and certainly me dad is in that school, that he was never a lover of Roger Hunt. I mean, I remember growing up, I don't know what happened, but me dad didn't like Roger Hunt. And I think you could argue that Jimmy Greaves and Jeff Hurst would have been a better partnership than Roger Hunt and Jeff Hurst.
Well, I really, Jimmy. It didn't matter with Jimmy who he
Yeah.
played up with, you know.
Yeah.
It's but I don't, you know. I spoke to a lot of Scousers, and I asked them about Roger Hunt, and but again, football supporters are fickle.
Yeah.
I played in his testimonial. I think Chelsea, we played up there in a testimonial years ago.
Mhm.
once again, you can score all them goals. I mean, Gary Lineker scored all them goals.
Yep.
SRBMedia.